All right, I'm back. Let's try this again. All right. You guys should be able to hear me a little better now. I had some issues getting the right mic connected for the audio. It was using my webcam video, but I am back in the building. And welcome to the Saturday night stream. Let me just make sure I repost this link here. All right. Welcome back again. And thank you for coming in. So we got I'm upgrade in the process of upgrading my equipment to make for a better show, a better stream, and the mic stand is still it should be here on Monday, so I don't have to hold this mic. But welcome to the stream. Today we're gonna talk about this idea: is rock and roll dead? And we're gonna really look at some comments by one of the members of Kiss, Gene Simmons, why I disagree with some of his logic that file sharing has ruined rock music and live music. I think the exact opposite has happened. And why there are different factors for why a lot of, if you think about it, many acts, when you look at rock and roll, blues, jam bands, and even jazz, there's not many modern acts that can sell out a stadium, right? There's no the Beatles. There's no next coming of the Beatles right now, or Led Zeppelin, or the Rolling Stones. You don't have people that can sell out an arena that are newer. In the last five years they've been out, and they're selling stadiums. They have a quick rise, couple albums, and then they're mainstream. They're everything on the radio. But we'll talk about why some of that has changed, but why, despite all of that, file sharing has actually helped save and salvage a lot for when it comes to live music. And we'll talk about some of the other factors that have impacted why you don't have, a rock band or a pop band like Michael Jackson came to your city, and everyone went, and it was huge. Any rock band that came to your city would come 70s, 80s, 90s, and that was the event to be at. And yes, there are still acts that sell out, but you don't have young acts that are selling out stadiums and arenas in rock. You have pop still has that, right? You have your pop stars, but for other genres of music outside of pop, it's not the same. And let me just check in to see. All right, we got two people here. If you're in here, just say hi in the chat if you're able to. Right. And then before we get to the main topic, all right, so that's Leia, DMB Mamas. What up? I hope all is well down in Florida. Oh, you just sent the link. Oh, awesome. Appreciate it. So just before we get to the main topic, what we're seeing right now with the live music is you're seeing mid-tier bands push their shows to September. You're seeing them push their shows September is what you're seeing. Oh, nice and warm. Glad it's warm down in Florida. Um, I may, I don't know. The pandemic has changed things, but I would love to get down to Miami again. Oh, thank you. I'm waiting for the mic stand. The mic stand is in transit right now, and hoping to just create a better setup for the streams and for the videos in general. What we're seeing though is that uh, a lot of the mid tier acts are moving their shows to September. Yeah, look like a professional. Foul ball. Nah. Down goes Frazier. But so yeah, you're seeing the mid tier acts are moving their live shows with full capacity to September. A lot of them are down going to do shows in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. What that tells me, this last week we've seen a lot of mid-tier acts move their shows to the southern states or announce drive-ins. Humphreys McGee, a mid-tier jam band, which actually falls under this conversation of rock. Is rock dead? And Gene Simmons, the main topic. We'll talk about that. But Humphreys McGee, a mid-tier act that can sell out about any venue, 1,500 to 5,000 people in any given major city. They're doing a couple of drive-ins at speedways. So they have a whole field at the racetracks for a couple markets, and they're just having people drive in. So you're going to see a lot of that during the spring and summer. But the actual in-person concerts were full capacity. They're being moved to the fall. With that being the first move, as far as a concert update, all the signs are pointing that the major bands are going to push things to 2022. I've always believed that at the beginning of this year, but all the signs are leading towards that. Everything is leading towards the major bands pushing to 2022. There may be some major bands that do decide to do mini tours in the southern states, some of the other midwestern states, or big sky country states, Montana, Idaho. They may do some shows out there when the mask mandates are lifted there, but don't expect 100% capacity stadiums or arenas or amphitheaters from coast to coast for 2021. And I think that a lot of the bands are waiting for this herd immunity to come. And herd immunity, while it's hopeful for end of this year, probably won't come until next year. And that's assuming that no variants get out of control. That's assuming that the vaccines are working. That's where we're at right now. So I still think that the major concerts, you're not going to have those major tours going on. Just some shows here and there for people, certain acts that want to defy the whole be safe thing, or just say, look, we'll take the risk. We've seen Kid Rock in Nashville play at some bars. You've seen some rappers, Bow Wow in Houston, play it in front of full crowds. You're gonna have some of those people, but I really don't think the major acts are gonna be playing. So let's get to the main topic. And Gene Simmons, there's an article here. I will post it in the chat. There's an article. Gene Simmons, a famous artist, here from Kish. He said back in 2014, rock is dead. He's doubling down on it in 2021. And he's saying the way the record companies are set up, the way file sharing is, that it's impossible for talent to truly grow. The actual talent. He's not saying there's not talented rock bands or musical acts in the genre, which can be very, it can stretch pretty far across other genres. He's saying that the way the record labels are set up, the way that file sharing is, it's impossible for the major, for a rock band to be like the Beatles, be like Led Zeppelin. And I think that I disagree with that. It's not because of the way the contracts are set up, or even the streaming and the free music that you can get now. I mean, there's just so many ways to not pay for music, and it's been like that since Napster, right at the turn of the century. But that is not why. Ultimately, I think that what a rock concert was, what a concert was in general, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was one of the only events you were going to have as far as being just an intriguing event. You had sporting events, you had concerts. Yes, you had fairs, you had other matters, but there were less things to do. So if a major act came to New York City or Boston or Chicago, people packed the venue. But I think the bigger thing is nowadays, our society is so segmented across different things, new hobbies, new ideas that didn't even exist back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s the way they do now. Yes, there were arcades in the 80s, but it wasn't something where you went to go to a major arena to watch people play video games. You would go to your arcade, and that was something you did in your early teens. As you got older, you would then go to rock concerts or sporting events. But nowadays, you have people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that will literally go and watch other people play video games on streams and in real life. My friends went to the Barclays Center in New York City, where many great musical acts sell that thing out. And they went to go see an Overwatch tournament. People literally got hotel rooms to sit in an arena to watch people play video games. And it's sold out. And it's there. This has been going on for the last decade. Video game tournaments are selling out basketball arenas. You have kids who may have been into wanting to be in a rock band if they were living in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that now there's so many different things, specialized camps that people are sending their kids to. I mean, think about it. I remember in the mid 2000s going to Maryland to spend summers with my aunts, and these were like cool new things, these specialized camps. I went to a University of Maryland College Park journalism day camp where I literally was with a professor who taught about sports writing. And I got to learn about it. We got to write articles. We watched a classic sports game and wrote an article about that. That was one summer. And it wasn't like a super expensive camp. I mean, anyone could have had interest in journalism could have afforded it. It wasn't obviously cheap, like as cheap as a summer camp to go, do hiking and swim and all that stuff, but it wasn't uber expensive. Even in that time period, I went to a NASA Goddard space camp. Now, this wasn't a space camp where you get to walk in space gear, the super rich one. This was just if you were interested in science and telescopes and space. Spent another summer down with my aunt in Maryland. There was a specialized camp, and these specialized camps have only grown. So you have these other things that take away from the teenage experience where it used to be teenagers went to skateboard, teenagers went to sporting events, or teenagers went to rock shows. That's what you did, right? Here in Hartford, Connecticut, one of the biggest draws is the summer concerts. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Wu Tang would be here, and Rage Against the Machine. They did a collab show, and it sold out the Meadows. Hootie and the Blowfish. I mean, there was just people that didn't even go to the concerts, just tailgated. The Dave Matthews Band did 3 shows in 99 and 2000 and sold out 3 straight shows. Like that's what you did. You went downtown, you hung out your party. If you were a teenager back then, that's what you did. But that's not what kids are all doing nowadays. Now, concerts still are popular, but there were other matters that stopped certain newer acts from getting that, building that fan base. AAU, right? If your kid plays a sport, people literally plan their vacations for their kids' summer baseball tournaments or basketball tournaments. These are cultural changes, and this is why I believe that while many classic bands can sell out an arena or a stadium, newer bands cannot do this. You don't have a band from the last 10 years that's a jam band that can do what the Dave Matthews Band or Fish did, selling out arenas and sometimes, some stadiums, or what the Grateful Dead did back in their day. Pink Floyd, stadiums full, still Rolling Stones still sell out football stadiums. But again, they were they were from a time that was all you really had in your town. That was the go-to event. Now there's so many specialized things you can do. There's so many hobbies that have been created or been made less expensive that there's competition between the live concert for the new act coming up and then whatever kids are doing nowadays. So what you have here is you have these nostalgia acts. Much of their fan base is older, retired. Much of their fan base, some of their fan base is spending the last dollars to go to this show. But a lot of these nostalgia acts, a lot of their fan base is making the most money they're going to make in their career. You got men and women in their 40s and 50s who are earning, peak salaries before they start to slope down to retirement or even off in their 60s for retirement. So they can sell out. The Rolling Stones announced a tour. It sells out because their fan base has the money, has the time. Their kids are leaving the house. They're becoming empty nesters, and they go see the Guns N' Roses, the AC/DCs, the Dead and Companies, and they fill out these ballparks and stadiums. Billy Joel. And then you even get to the Dave Matthews Bands, the Fish, the Pearl Jams from the 90s. Some of these acts still have it. Now, a lot of the acts from the 90s that were popping, they can't fill out. They can, they're at a county fair now. But you do have some of these acts, Fish, Pearl Jam, Dave Matthews Band, Foo Fighters, that they just have, they can fill up these venues pretty good. But that's where the rock star crowds end, right? That's where the rock star crowds end. I think about the Avid Brothers, Humphreys McGee, Twiddle, String Cheese Incident. There's no real jam band that does what the Grateful Dead did, or what Fish and Dave Matthews Band. You can argue they're not a jam band, but there's not really much that. There's no band from the 2000s that does, that's like that truly just sells out stadiums. That's not pop or doesn't lean towards pop, right? It's not there. And if you're talking about the last 5 years, there's not really a band that rose up like Led Zeppelin or like Stevie Wonder or like the Rolling Stones. Like there's no acts that just, wow. They went from small local taverns to theaters to then larger amphitheaters to stadiums. It's a lot more specialized. And there's a lot of acts that are just playing festivals. They're not even playing they're not, much of their touring is they'll hit 3 or 4 festivals and then maybe do some smaller tier shows. And many times the festival is a great way to make money because you can get a crowd of 60, 70,000 people. And many of these people may not have even heard of your music. They're there for the other major act. or major headliner, but they're in the crowd and they learn about your music. But you don't have a lot of these younger acts rising up. They're getting stuck in the mid tier. And the mid tier is not the arenas or stadiums, it's right below that. It's the inside theaters or the smaller outdoor pavilions of 5, 6, 7,000 people. And that's it. That's your capacity or cap. They can't get past that 10,000 person crowd. And many of them are doing 2, 3, 4, 5,000 um, you know, person venues on any given night. They can't break out of it. They're stuck in this rut and they can't go past it. So there are some things that in this, Gene Simmons says that the file sharing ruined. It's ruined the idea that we can have another Beatles. And I disagree because file sharing actually is something that sharing music has always been a big part of the growth and the success of other artists. Even if you didn't buy a mixtape, a CD, or vinyl, your friend played it or it was on the radio. And that was free. Those were free mediums. So that's what gets you in, and then you decide to buy. And I think that even the acts that are selling out stadiums, much of them came through tapers and word of mouth, where the Grateful Dead, right? Now Dead and Company's the real has the most amount of original Grateful Dead members in it. The Grateful Dead, Dave Matthews Band, right? These are artists or acts that allowed for people to go to their show with a mic and tape their shows. As long as they're not going to give them the sound quality, high quality, this is what the band is recording for a potential live album. But you can take your own, $200, $300 mic, stand in the back or put it up on a clamp, and just the whole show can be shared with others. Word of mouth, organically. They don't care. They weren't as much stressed about file sharing like LimeWire and Napster, because they knew that if people could just hear their music for free, they would pay for the show. And ultimately, this file sharing, to me, streaming, YouTube, SoundCloud, this has actually brought the concert back. And I want to start off in hip hop. I remember being in college from 2008 to 2012. And there were free mixtapes for J. Cole, Drake, Kendrick Lamar. These are three acts now. They don't have to make another album again, but they can go on a tour and sell out an arena or amphitheater. And I've seen all of these acts in sold out crowds. I've seen J. Cole, 30,000 people at the Xfinity Theater in Hartford. I've seen Kendrick Lamar there, same thing, just close to 30,000 people or slightly below that in here at Xfinity Theater. And I've seen Drake, as he had his debut album out, filling out an arena for an event here as his first album was coming out. They all had mixtapes that were free to the public. You could share it. It wasn't illegal to get the music. You download it from datpiff.com. And these are three of the best hip hop acts of the last 15 years. J. Cole, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. They started with sharing their files via mixtapes, and now their albums do well and they fill out big arenas, big amphitheaters. So I don't believe that the music, the file sharing has helped save the live show, because these acts developed an organic crowd. A lot of them were college kids like me in that mid 2000s right to 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. Kids were in college and this is what they were listening to, and you could get this, you could access the music without having to pay anything. Then their albums came out, but then they were streaming. Spotify, you could get it for free. Just listen to commercials. YouTube, you could listen to the songs for free on YouTube. And it brought back this idea of the hip hop concert, because before the Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick, there was a little bit of a lull in having acts that could fill out these amphitheaters front to back. You had your Jay-Z's, and but that was really it. There wasn't many other acts that can consistently, over after 2 or 3 years, sell out these arenas. But after the mixtape became a thing again, the free music became a thing again, they could sell out a lot of stuff. Same thing with Beyonce, Jay-Z, Taylor Swift, Rihanna. These are acts that they benefited from file sharing. Yes, people bought their albums, but a lot of people at the show maybe got a bootleg, but they went to the show and they could sell out stadiums, literally. Jay-Z, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, they sell out stadiums. The music connected, and a lot of the music was accessible online for free. The lyric videos they used to have on YouTube, but they still do, but that made people would read the lyrics and watch them and connect with the artist. And it saved the live concert. I don't think without file sharing, the live concert wouldn't mean as much as it does now. People connect emotionally with the YouTube video because it's free. You don't have to pay anything. You can listen to a deep track. And an artist may play a deep track or a mixtape track at one of their shows and it gets huge reaction. You could have singles that weren't mandated by the label, and that's a bigger hit than what the label wanted to put forward. So I don't believe that this idea that rock is dead because of file sharing. Ultimately, I believe that things have become more specialized, and there's so many different genres have split off to subgenres, and there's so many different musical acts in a given night in the same city than there used to be. It used to only be one main concert that night. That was it. If Zeppelin came to your town, if the Grateful Dead, that was the show. That's it. I've been to New York City and gone to a Billy Joel show or an Allman Brothers Band show, and other major acts were playing. Dropkick Murphys, or Mariah Carey. One, I think when I saw, I think it was Billy Joel. Mariah Carey is playing at the Beacon, same night. Billy Joel, Mariah Carey, same city. So there's so many more things that are segmented, and people, have different tastes where they're not. It's not like, all right, we're all looking for that it band. Everyone's looking for a specific genre or specific pocket of music that they like. And sometimes that crosses genres like me. I mean, I saw J. Cole and Elton John and Willie Nelson in about a 8 or 9 day period. I went to Farm Aid, I went to Elton John Farewell, and I went to J. Cole show in a 8 or 9 day period back in, I think that was 2018. So I don't have a specific genre you can tie me to because I like different types, and that's what's happening when people are more segmented. It's not we like this, everyone likes this in artists, right? People have different tastes. You could go to a show and ask people what else they listen to, and they all have different answers. And what that is doing is it's creating a mid-tier. Most artists right now are in a mid-tier because of that. I think of again the Humphrey McGee. I think of the Avid Brothers, String Cheese Instant. These are acts that they can sell out at Red Rocks Amphitheater for 3 nights. They can have a New Year's Eve show and it sells out an arena. But most of their shows are 2,000-3,000 people. Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, right? This is an act that it has world renowned recognition. They've won they've been nominated for Grammys and won Grammys, and they can't sell out an arena. And that's not a bad thing. It's just what they do is specialized. What they do doesn't get a Pink Floyd type crowd or a Beatles type crowd. And I think that the other thing too is the 70s and the 80s was a golden age of these are the popular act. These are the innovators that wrote some things that were timeless. And once you get past that golden age, it's hard to get something to replicate that again. There are people that can play as good or better than Jimi Hendrix, but they can't write the songs like Jimmy and his crew did. They can't write Rolling Stone. There are people that can play it just as good as George Harrison. People can imitate George Harrison and Paul McCartney and the Beatles. They can imitate them, but to have everything together is very hard. There's people that can write really good songs, but they just can't play the music like Pink Floyd or the Beatles did. And I think that's the struggle. Is I've seen many great acts that can play. I've seen musicians that can play all sorts of scale, all sorts of jams and solos. They just can't write as good as a Beatles. I've seen people that can write very very good content, but they can't play like David Gilmour. They can't play bass like Geddy Lee. They can't play electric guitar like Alec Lifeson. And I think the other thing is it's hard to it was such a golden age and pure exploration in finding this really the genres finding themselves. I think of a Stevie Wonder in the 70s and in um a Led Zeppelin in the 70s or Rolling Stones in the 70s. There was something special about that era that just can't be replicated fully. People can take the music and play it and cover it and take aspects of it, but it's just that was the golden age. Doesn't mean rock is dead. It just means that rock is in a different spot. It is sectioned off. It has a life cycle, but it's not dead. It's just the reality is this band is appreciated, but it's appreciated by 3 to 4 thousand people in every single city. It may not be appreciated by 30,000 people. And also, what could be 30,000 people, some of that percentage of people are doing other things. There's other hobbies, there's other things to do. You can fly out to a city quicker than you could in the 70s. In the 70s, you had to drive. You could fly if you really loved that artist, but most people just drove to stuff. Now there's so much more access to the world that you can explore it outside of your little bubble. So you don't have to wait for certain acts to come to you. Right. You can go to Paris. You can go to Cancun. You can go to those places instead of waiting for celebrities and musical influencers or the biggest or Michael Jordan to come to your city, which is a big thing over the last 20 years as far as travel is. But essentially, that is where I stand as far as where music is. And the other thing that makes it a little bit, this has been something I heard from those in the DMB community. The Copper Pot brought this up on Facebook. When you look at a band like the Dave Matthews Band, they don't have openers anymore. Billy Joel has openers, but it depends on the show and they're not announced. And Earth, Wind, and Fire had, when I saw them, they had a comedian come on. But you're seeing certain acts now, it's just them. Or maybe they have a very small act, but not someone they're looking to rise up. And what used to happen when you look at the Grateful Dead, when you look at the Dave Matthews Band, I mean, Dave Matthews Band brought the Roots on one tour. They brought OAR on another tour. They brought Guster on another tour. Like they were really showcasing acts. Their openers were, hey, we love these people. Here's an opener. Check them out. You may like them too. And these acts were growing after being with Dave Matthews Band, right? And they may have opened up for us some other major acts, and then they made it, right? But we're not seeing that as much anymore as bands. The nostalgia acts don't really get a good opener who's young and talented and successful, as they used to do. You're not seeing certain acts have openers anymore, and Dave Matthews Band is a case in point there. They don't have openers, and so many bands I've listened to, they were openers for DMB, and then they blew up. And I think of the Head and the Heart was one of the last bands that I remember that just blew up. And now they haven't been able to make it to like sold out arenas from what I remember pre-pandemic. They were pretty close and they have a huge following. But the Head and the Heart was amplified by being on tour with the Dave Matthews Band and other things. They work, they hustle, but that exposure is starting to go away. So is the only viable solution more opening acts at larger venues? I think that it's a possible. It's possible. It can help. It doesn't hurt. It only helps. At the same time, I think that some of the next this when it comes to the current generation of musicians, it is so far across a spectrum than it was in the 70s. Rock music had a certain sound. Even the most unique acts, they stuck to a formula for rock music. Where nowadays there are so many talented artists who have a niche. And they have followers across the world, but they're only grabbing a certain segment because there's so many other entertainment options. But having openers will help. If they can find more bands, it will help them because again, Head in the Heart, Brandy Carlisle, these are acts that open for the Dave Matthews Band right before they cut off this opener idea outside of the Gorge, and they really, these bands grew. These musicians grew after being openers. And I think it's really getting opening acts that you find that, hey, this could be the next thing, and exposing them, because exposure is key. And that's why a lot of artists do festivals, right? A lot of artists do festivals, and they build their fan base off that festival. Somebody goes there. Festivals are like almost like an iPod playlist. If you go, people go to a festival hoping, oh, they see their artist is on this playlist, or really the lineup, and then they discover a new band that's playing before or after them, or they're waiting a couple hours. They want to get this nice spot for the main act, and they're sitting there for 6 hours holding this GA spot up close. And then an act at 4 or 5 o'clock comes on, and like, wow, they're awesome. Festivals is helping that, but festivals is also, in some ways, festivals they're helping introduce artists, but then those artists are synonymous with just then being festival acts. Yes, and DMB Miles. Yeah, it would be awesome for special guests to be opening acts too. And I think you talk about in Florida, Tedeschi Truck Band, they you know, they didn't all play with Dave Matthews Band in 2019, but Susan Tedeschi came on for Cortez, the Killer. But to have like that whole band open up for that night. But the challenge is too, the other challenge is too, a lot of acts are just touring. They got to get their music, they got to work it out on stage, and they may not necessarily be picked up for the Dave Matthews Band. And I think some of it may come down to finance too. The band wants to make all this money, and the expenses are higher, so it's cheaper to just not have an opening act. So to hire Tedeschi Trucks Band as an opener, it's going to be expensive because they can tour by themselves and be okay. They can tour by themselves and be okay. And speaking of Tedeschi Trucks, I remember going to a concert here at an amphitheater, the Xfinity Theater, and the show didn't sell out. But to me, some of my favorite shows are shows that don't sell out, but that are at an amphitheater where you can see a mid-tier act at a large amphitheater for a lower price. Tedeschi Trucks Band had Marcus King Band as an opener. And the Marcus King Band has grown since they opened for Tedeschi Trucks Band a couple years ago, to the point where they tour now. But the thing about the Marcus King Band is they are limited to their fan base because it's not mainstream friendly. And the mainstream, there is no real mainstream anymore. That's the struggle too. You're not going to have a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds listening to Marcus King Band. Marcus King Band is more of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s who love the blues. But that band has blown up. I mean, I was center orchestra, maybe, let's just say 15 rows back, really good seats. And I saw Marcus King Band, Drive By Truckers, and Tedeschi Trucks Band at a large, high quality grade A amphitheater. And I paid $50 for those tickets. They were much more than that. I bought them on StubHub. But like that was a special event. And I think another thing, the struggle is Now, Tedeschi Trucks Band, they may not ever go back to the Xfinity Theater. They tried it. They had this big lineup of Marcus King Band, which was on the rise. Drive By Truckers was an established band that has a niche audience, and then they came on, and they also have their little niche. And it was mostly full in the amphitheater, but the lawn wasn't as full. They may not ever go to that venue again, and part of that is the economics of it too. These major amphitheaters aren't going to allow an act to grow like they may have been able to do years ago. They're not going to allow a mid-tier band to go to a big time amphitheater and only sell 50% of the seats. They need 70, 80, 90% of the seats sold. Even if people don't show up or they leave early or it's corporate seats, they need that in order for the venue to make money from the alcohol sales. If they only have 50% or 60% of the venue, and the profit margins are thin, they need to have more people there to buy beer, to buy food, to buy other stuff. And then that helps them to break even. And I've seen a lot of great shows where just it didn't sell out. And then that band never comes back to that theater or arena, wherever it was. And it was an awesome show. It was nice to have a little bit of space because it wasn't sold out and people had a ball. But that's one of the things too, is they don't allow that as much. If you're not selling out an amphitheater, you get downgraded to a smaller venue, and certain acts aren't given that time to grow into a larger venue. Or hey, you know what, you may not sell out this venue, but look, we'll lower some lights, we'll close a couple concession stands, let's make it work, and let's let a mid-tier act get that major stage at an arena or an amphitheater. I think of Bastille and Mohegan Sun. That show didn't sell out, and I was stage side and got some pretty good seats at the last minute for a good price. And it was awesome to see Bastille in an arena like that versus a smaller club. And will they come back to Mohegan Sun after the ticket sales? I probably not. I hope they will, but probably not. And that's the challenge. Bands were able to grow into what grow into their popularity. When the Dave Matthews Band came around 95, 96, 97 here in Hartford, they were allowed to grow into that venue. And by 1998, the two nights that they had, they were filling out both of those nights. By 99, they had 3 nights. 2000, 3 nights. Then they went back down to 2 nights as the band started to level off in popularity. And then they went down to 1 night, and now they're going to be at Mohegan Sun because they can't sell out the lawn like they used to 10 years ago. And that's another thing that kind of is the venues aren't willing to give this band time to grow. You got to fill 80, 90% of this venue out. Otherwise, you don't get to perform here. Is another thing. Any other thoughts, DMB Mamas? Any other thoughts? All right. Well, that is going to wrap up the show. But thank you guys. I know a couple people came in and came out. And for those of you who are watching the rebroadcast after I post this, thank you guys for watching. Definitely like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to try to do this every Saturday and get the crew back that we had a couple years ago. Hopefully, if people are free and see. Right now, today start at 9:30. Maybe we'll do 10 o'clock. Maybe we'll do 9 o'clock like I did last week. But definitely like, comment, subscribe. ConcertViz34 on Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. It's your boy ConcertViz34. I am out. Peace.